Hi, Sharon.
Hello,
Welcome.
thank you. I can't stay the whole time, but I can stay for a little bit. I have another Zoom meeting at,
Gotcha. We're only going to go for about an hour. So I'm Will McGarvey, Executive Director of the Interfaith Council of Contra Costa County. We're glad that you're back for a conversation on with the Interfaith Sustainable Food Collaborative. And we have Laura and Stephanie and Becky that are going to help us think about how our congregations can help people get onto pandemic EBTs tonight. And it is being recorded so that we can share it with some folks that couldn't make it tonight. But we anticipate just less than a 60-minute conversation. So take it away, Laura.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for coming. I'm just going to go through our agenda for tonight. We had our little introduction. Then we're going to go through what is P-EBT, lessons learned from P-EBT 1.0, and an advocacy piece, and then ways faith groups can help, and then updates from I4C, and then we'll have any questions and a discussion at the end. Okay, and I will let my Executive Director for Interfaith Sustainable Food Collaborative, Steve Schwartz, continue with the presentation.
I think he dropped off the call, unfortunately.
Off the call?
Yeah, both of the previous connections have dropped off, so.
Okay, well, I'll tell you all a little bit about Interfaith Food. We empower faith communities to cultivate their faith values through supporting family farmers and increasing access to local and healthy food, advocating for sustainable food and farm policy. So those are our main components for helping faith groups. Let me see if I can reach Steve again. Or Stephanie, if you want to help me with that.
I can call him. Just for context, we're also a nonprofit based out of Sebastopol. We work in 5 different counties, Sonoma, Marin, Alameda, Contra Costa, and San Francisco as well. And I'm gonna call Steve right now.
And Will, if you'd like to tell a little bit more about I4C.
Sure. Interfaith Council of Contra Costa County is 109 congregations, monasteries, and retreat centers that do a lot of work together, including our iChange program that Greg is leading. And Greg, did you want to say a little bit about iCare, and then I'll fill in the rest of the dots?
Sure. Yeah, iCare is a program where we pair 2 or more faith communities in projects, and we have been doing quite a bit in the food arena, working with Monument Crisis Center, with the Trinity Center, and with the county directly. And we're, I've been intrigued by, the food or the farming, aspect of it, and is hoping it's something that, our members will jump on, because it's a great program. The farming. So I don't know, anything else, Will, that you think I should add?
Well, I would just add that iChange is the system that we're using to help congregations find other congregations that want to work on, and then other volunteers from our interfaith circles for the projects that they want to work on. And if you have any questions about how to get it done, Greg is your guy. He will walk you through the process, and our Sign Up Genius helps organize a lot of that. But we have a great portal on our website, and Greg is our staff person that oversees all of that.
Yeah, and I did put my email in the chat.
Great, thank you guys for.
And then we, the Interfaith Council also has a Climate Action Network and a Social Justice Alliance and a chaplain at Juvenile Hall and a lot of other ministries. So just take a look at interfaithccc.org. And this year, one of the projects that we've been taking on is having these monthly conversations on food insecurity, and glad to partner with the Interfaith Food Sustainability Cooperative in doing that.
Yeah, thank you, Will and Greg. Stephanie and I will continue this presentation. So we're going to tell you a bit more about P-EBT. The number of P-EBT eligible kids by county ranges in a total in California of 5 million eligible children for this pandemic electronic benefits transfer. Food justice includes affordable access to healthful food in our communities. Low-income families with school-age kids who are eligible to receive free and reduced price meals at school and aren't receiving them due to school closures can get a max of $136 per month during the 2020 through 2021 school year for food purchases. If eligible families are unaware of the benefit or afraid to utilize more than 120 million will be left on the table in the Bay Area. So we want to do our best to get this out to as many people as possible. Faith groups are a trusted source of information for families, and so they are very important to getting this information out. Stephanie, if you'd like to tell a bit more about P-EBT.
We're also hoping to use our connections with faith-based partners in order to get the messaging through different types of organizations and get families the access to these messagings in various aspects of their lives as well. So P-EBT, or Pandemic Electronic Benefit Transfer, is a federal program that was established due to the virus for children who are eligible for free and reduced price meals through various federal programs, but are not actually getting these meals because schools are either closed, doing completely virtual or limited hours due to social distancing and other various safety precautions. We will refer to them as P-EBT, but their longer name is Pandemic Electronic Benefit Transfer, or Pandemic EBT, or P-EBT benefits, just for reference. So for eligibility, it is available for children who are on a free reduced price meal system and are attending a school that is not fully in person for at least 5 days during this current school year. So this is the 2020-2021. But this eligibility does vary upon the school's operational status, and it does not include every single school in the state. This program also is eligible for people of and families of different immigration status, which we will highlight throughout our presentation. And this new round of P-EBT, which they're calling P-EBT 2.0, which is technically the third phase, does include a portion of these benefits to children ages 0 to 6, which we have not seen before. And their eligibility will be determined on whether or not their household is already using CalFresh, and if their preschool or the preschool that they were attending was closed and or doing some type of virtual limited hours due to the pandemic as well.
How is P-EBT accessed? Eligible children who receive these free and reduced price meals are eligible. So it's through these programs that they can get access to P-EBT. So any of these programs, CalFresh, Medi-Cal, CalWorks, or foster care benefits, should receive a P-EBT card in the mail, and they do not need to enroll for P-EBT for this round. Children under 6, again, need to be living in a household that receives CalFresh to be eligible. And the new P-EBT card will be distributed hopefully through April through June. And they'll need a card for the future benefits that come through this card. Then they look a little different from the 1.0. What is on the P-EBT card? It's working kind of like a debit card, and it can be used for all locations, excepting CalFresh and EBT only for food purchases. Food can be bought at supermarkets, farmers markets, and some CSAs, and also online at Walmart or Amazon. Stephanie, would you like to go ahead?
So these benefits are available for undocumented immigrant students because the eligibility is based on a federal program that does not require the immigration status to be determined. We also will emphasize throughout this presentation that this P-EBT program is not for public charge, and this was confirmed by the Department of Homeland Security and the Marin County Office of Education. I believe CDSS also has some language on this. And as we will also highlight throughout our presentation, is the market match program. So this is just an example from P-EBT 1.0. Families were able to double their benefits, and there's some numbers on the slide, per child by purchasing produce at farmers markets, farm stands, and CSA programs or community supported agriculture programs, using incentive programs such as the market match program or the double up bucks. We have some links listed where you can find markets who do have these incentive programs, fmfinder.org, and then also any corner stores that are participating at doubleupca.org/locations.
Food justice for all kids, regardless of immigration status. This P-EBT does not affect public charge. So the P-EBT benefits are available for undocumented immigrant students, and it won't be a public charge. And we want to stress that so that everyone can get access to these benefits and no one's left out. It's very important. Some answers to common questions about P-EBT. P-EBT is not for college age students, but they could be eligible for general CalFresh benefits. Families newly eligible for free and reduced price school lunch and lost this access to the school meals will get the P-EBT benefits. And then families with children who applied for CalFresh, Medi-Cal, CalWorks, foster care benefits, or homeless students after their school was closed will get the P-EBT card in the mail. This will be an automatic eligibility. Students attending a provision or private schools participating on this federal meal program are eligible for P-EBT. And students utilizing other forms of food assistance like grab and go are still eligible as P-EBT for a supplemental benefit. Benefits last for 1 year from the day the P-EBT card is received, and the call center is available during the weekdays from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. for customers to contact if they have any questions. Stephanie, if you'd like to.
Another question that we wanted to address is what happens for kids in schools that are reopening for in-person instruction full-time. We have a couple of variations of this question on the slide, and the answer that we got from CDSS directly was that students attending schools that are assumed to be providing in-person instruction to the majority of students will not be eligible for P-EBT, and we should have more information on this once the CDC promotional materials of this program do come out within the next couple of weeks. Some of the things that are new with this round compared to the first round of P-EBT, there's no actual application. Before people needed to, I believe it was a 30-day window to apply, and Interfaith Sustainable Food Collaborative actually did some informational Zooms and a ton of outreach to different partners in our network, but there's no physical application that people need to apply for. All of the information is accessed by the 2019-2020 or the current school year 2021 eligibility info for students who are on free and reduced price meals. Tentatively, we believe that these benefits will start being issued and rolled out April of this year, but this has not been 100% confirmed by CDSS. Like I mentioned earlier, children ages 0 to 6 are included in this round of eligibility through this CalFresh piece. And what we also would like to emphasize, we did have an example card on our first slide, but there will be a completely different card that will be mailed to participants who are eligible. And this card does not have an apple on it, which will be a key piece to remember as we move forward as well.
And then I'd like to introduce Becky Gershon.
The symbol of an apple, is that what you mean, Stephanie?
There's an image of an apple. Yes, that is correct.
Sorry about that, please.
Oh, good. And Becky is the senior policy advocate for the California Association of Food Banks, and her presentation will cover pandemic EBT in California, the policy overview, and original research. So I'm going to let Becky share her screen.
Great. Thanks, Laura. All right, just getting it up. Do you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Let me just start the presentation. Okay, you see the bigger screen now? Okay, great. So thanks for having me. Again, I'm Becky Gershon. I work at the California Association of Food Banks. We are the statewide association for 42 food banks that are all across California. It sounds like for you folks that are listening, you already know about the San Francisco Marin Food Bank of Contra Costa Solano, the Alameda County Community Food Bank. Those are all food banks that are our members. So I am going to present to you some findings from a research project that was done by a National Emerson Hunger Fellow. She just wrapped, she was with us for about 6 months doing this research on P-EBT, and she's moved on now and is back in DC. Because she's in DC time, she understandably declined giving a presentation at 10 p.m. her time. So I'm kind of stepping in for her, but just want to make sure to give her full credit for the things that I'm going to present. So P-EBT, I just think this is a really great quote to kind of put into context the impact and the power of P-EBT. So Dottie Rosenbaum, who's a really well-known advocate and in DC at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, said P-EBT is an example of the government rising to the occasion in a major crisis to innovate and provide millions of dollars of food assistance to families. So I just think it's really important to remember that this program had never been done before. I think that the framework for this type of a program had been thought about during the H1N1 virus outbreak, many years ago, but it was never actually implemented. So it's just really amazing that we, as a country, set up this program and asked states to implement it on such short notice under such extreme circumstances, and it reached so many children. Also, I think, important context is just the state of hunger among children in California. So pre-COVID, the national statistic was that 15% of all households with children were food insecure. On its own, a wildly high, unacceptable number. But after the COVID pandemic began, the national average for all households with children rose. You can see the solid red line there is for all households with children after the COVID pandemic began. And it's doubled. Childhood hunger has doubled in this country. And it is no surprise, unfortunately, that we see huge disparities among different racial and ethnic groups. And you can see that really clearly on this graph right? Hispanic and Latino families are seeing much higher rates than, say, for example, households where the head of household is white. So I just think it's also important to remember this context when we're talking about public benefits to support these families. In terms of the rollout of pandemic EBT, the first round of pandemic EBT, which happened last summer, these are some high-level statistics from California about how many children it reached. The total P-EBT benefits issued was about 1.4, just under $1.4 billion, which is tremendous, and that that leads to big economic impact overall for communities as well, as people spend that money pretty immediately at the grocery store, on food, at their local markets. So it's definitely a benefit for communities as well as the families that receive the benefits. Also important to call out that I wrote at the top there, a 95% statewide reach rate. This is really amazing. I think this is one of the highest numbers among states that implemented the P-EBT program across the country, meaning of the children that we identified as potentially being eligible for P-EBT, the benefit was given to at least 95% of those children. And again, just thinking back to what I said about, we stood up a brand new program with very little administrative funding support in a short amount of time. And it's just really incredible that it reached such a broad, wide, deep community of folks. So the research that Rocio did, she wanted to kind of study the impact of P-EBT from recipients' perspectives through a survey and a series of interviews. So she tried to answer questions like, how did P-EBT impact families' food insecurity and economic security overall? What challenges did P-EBT recipients experience in applying for or using the benefit? How could the process for applying for or using P-EBT be improved? Knowing that we were going to do another round, like what can we learn from the last round that we can implement for the second round? So these are some of the types of questions that she was trying to address in her research. So she created an online survey, which ended up reaching over 1,400 respondents from around the state, which is just incredible. I don't think we've ever done a survey of clients of any type before that's reached more than a few hundred. So it's really amazing that we got such great responses. She also did interviews with about 19 P-EBT recipients, so kind of intimate one-on-one Zoom interviews with people to kind of dive a little bit deeper than what the survey was getting at. And she also interviewed 12 key stakeholders. And we also compensated participants in the interviews, as well as setting up a raffle for the survey respondents with $50 gift cards. So we wanted to make sure that we were really showing our appreciation for the time and the sort of emotional labor that people were putting into sharing their stories. One of the findings, so I'll go through a few slides here that talk about some of the key findings, which I distilled a little bit for this short presentation. We asked about what happened to your family's income during the first months of the pandemic. I think probably this is no surprise to any of you. 13% said that we lost all our income. About 50% said our income went down a lot. 28% said income went down a little. So the vast majority of people reported that to some degree their income went down. And there's a really powerful quote right there. She's talking about P-EBT. It changed my life because we made less income, and although we lived paycheck to paycheck, the pressure was different. I don't know where I'm going to get money. I can't pay bills this month. We also asked about how people used their stimulus checks. Both the federal stimulus checks and the state-funded DRE benefits that were provided to people who are undocumented. So again, maybe no surprise that people responded, the vast majority of people responded that they used at least part of their stimulus checks on food. 30% said they used all of it on food. 50% said they used at least half of it. So I feel like this really illustrates the point around the real tangible food hardship that people were experiencing, to the point where any extra income comes into the household and they were spending it predominantly on food. You've already heard Laura and Stephanie talk about public charge, but just to say again, P-EBT is not a public charge benefit. It will not impact immigration status, but it is important to remember that people are still confused about this. It is, you know, we have many decades of, you know, scary things happening at the federal level, lots of misinformation, confusion, policies that keep flip-flopping at the federal level, which makes it hard for people to keep up with in terms of public charge and immigration status. So it's no surprise that people still feel worried and confused about whether certain public benefits are considered a public charge. So I just wanted to reiterate that with a couple of quotes here that really, I think really illustrate that people were very confused about whether P-EBT was a public charge or not. We also asked folks about any challenges they may have had in accessing P-EBT or using the benefit. And just looking at my notes here. Yeah, so I think also important to remember that a lot of people had pretty basic questions about how EBT cards work. Not everybody who received P-EBT was someone that's been on a public benefit before. So maybe they received this EBT card and really had no idea what it was, where can I use it? What can I buy with it? How do I activate it? So I think important to just remember as you're talking to people that may have received a P-EBT card, that they may be really not sure about what it is. So starting with the basics about it's a card that you can use at grocery stores, places that accept EBT, and you can buy groceries with it, I think is really helpful.
So if someone
yeah.
was on CalFresh already, will it just be added to their CalFresh account as a separate card then?
No. So every state has implemented this program differently. In some states, not in California, they have loaded people's CalFresh, but they call it SNAP in other states, cards with these extra P-EBT benefits. In California, we are treating CalFresh and P-EBT as completely separate programs, and people are receiving a P-EBT only card. It's a good question. A lot of folks had issues with setting up the PIN. So when they received their P-EBT card in the mail, it was accompanied by kind of a letter, an information sheet that said, call this number and do XYZ to set up your PIN number. Unfortunately, despite the many languages that people speak across California, the instructions were only in English. So that led to a lot of confusion. You know, some people had issues with their P-EBT cards being sent to the wrong address. A lot of people, let's see, 18.44% plus 7.36% of folks had some sort of issue with not being able to get in touch with somebody at the state to resolve their P-EBT related issues. So you probably are all well aware of that too, as people may have come to you with questions about like, I was supposed to receive my card, but I never got it, or I can't figure out how to activate it. Can you help me? So there was a lot of frustration there with people not being able to get through to somebody that could answer their questions. So we also asked about kind of, and wanted to get at kind of the connection between P-EBT and CalFresh. So we asked respondents, who were all P-EBT recipients, whether or not they were already on CalFresh. About half of people responded that they were not already on CalFresh. And so for those people, we asked follow-up questions to understand why they weren't already on CalFresh. The vast majority of people, 42%, said that they were worried about using government programs. So that could, you can use your imagination a little bit there. It could range from people being worried about how it might impact their immigration status, which is of course a really common question and concern. It could be people, not necessarily worried about immigration status, but maybe they're just kind of don't feel good about using government programs. I think we've all heard folks with that kind of a mentality as well. Yeah, so just interesting here to think about the connection between CalFresh and P-EBT. And also I think that this illustrates the point that while we talk to people about P-EBT, it's a really excellent opportunity to also talk to them about CalFresh. Like, oh, you got this P-EBT card, it works like this, you can buy groceries at your local market. Also, if you applied for CalFresh, you could get benefits all year round, not just during the pandemic. So I feel like it's a really good segue into getting people interested in CalFresh. We asked about the impact of P-EBT. So I think specifically the way we asked it is, how did P-EBT impact your family? And I think this graph shows kind of the importance of thinking about P-EBT as an economic stimulus, as well as a food benefit. So a lot of people said, it stretched our food budget for the whole family, but also a lot of people, 55%, said it reduced our worries in paying for other household expenses. So I think we can all kind of imagine how that works, right? As we kind of juggle our household budgets, when one sort of budget item gets supplemented, it eases the pressure on other aspects of our budget too. So it's a really important program for families' economic security overall as well. So I'm going to move quickly into what policy recommendations Rocio made at the end of her big research project. And I'll just explain a little bit each of them as I go along. So kind of big bucket of policy recommendations here around improving the P-EBT experience for families. So one thing was to create clear messaging about P-EBT eligibility and public charge for immigrant communities. So in terms of advocacy right now, we're really encouraging the governor to put out even more convincing communication saying that P-EBT is not a public charge. That has yet to come out, but we're crossing our fingers and keep pushing that lever to make sure that statewide we have really clear communication. Expand P-EBT customer service opportunities. So actually, thankfully, CDSS at the state has or is in the process of hiring 600 additional staff for the P-EBT call center. So this time around, going into P-EBT 2.0, we're really hopeful that it will be much easier for folks to call the phone number and actually get through to a human that can help to answer questions about P-EBT. Translating all P-EBT materials into all threshold languages. Again, we're really thankful that with additional administrative dollars that the state has access to this time around, they are making a big effort to translating all materials into the 6 most spoken languages among school children across California. And there will be additional language capabilities on the call center as well. So I think this message was heard loud and clear by CDSS. Another bucket of recommendations was around maximizing the opportunity of P-EBT. So one thing she noted was that we should implement the 15% P-EBT benefit boost to recalculate an increase in P-EBT benefits. Thankfully, that has happened. This time around, P-EBT 2.0 is a higher benefit than it was the first time. So we're really thankful for that. And she also said that we need robust engagement by all education stakeholders. So this is a really important point. We learned through our survey that people really, really trust information that comes from their schools. And so we need schools, school districts to be really ahead of the game on making sure that people understand what's happening, so that they are getting trusted information right from the beginning. And that is something that if you are looking for ways to kind of help move things along, this is an area where if you have good relationships with your local school district, local schools, beginning to have conversations with them about making sure that they're putting out good messaging about P-EBT is a really great place to start. Third and final bucket of recommendations is around leveraging other anti-hunger programs. So creating strong avenues to connect P-EBT recipients to existing programs like CalFresh. I already talked about that a little bit. Simplifying and expanding CalFresh eligibility. That is a long battle that we are prepared to fight at the federal level. That is happening every year since I've been doing this work. And then the last two, provide universal school meals, as in every child in California, regardless of their family's income, should get a free meal when they're at school. Excuse me, as well as implement out of school time EBT permanently. And that one is about, think about the times of year when children are not in school. There's winter break, which might be a week or 2 weeks, depending on what school you're at. There's spring break, which might be a week or two. And then there's summer break, which is months long. And those are all times in the year when children don't have access to school meals, when normally during the school year they would rely on them. So that brings me to my next slide in terms of state and federal advocacy opportunities. So I just wanted to share one of each. So on the state level, we are supporting and really working hard to make sure SB 364 by Senator Skinner gets passed this year. So this bill would do two things. It's called the End Child Hunger Act of 2021. One thing it would do is that it would establish the California Universal School Meal Program that would allow free breakfast and lunches to all children in California. Again, regardless of what your family's income is, kids should get meals at school when they're in school. And second thing, it would establish the Better Out of School Time Nutrition Program, or BOOST, to prevent child hunger during school breaks or campus closures. So essentially it would be sort of like a P-EBT program, but we wouldn't call it pandemic EBT, that would be given to children during prolonged school breaks. So we don't actually have an action item on this right now because it hasn't been set for a hearing, but I put the website down there for our legislation tracker on our website. And you can check back there to see when there are opportunities for you to weigh in and show support. And on the federal front, help to pass the budget reconciliation bill. So there's a couple things related to P-EBT in the bill. One is that it would authorize P-EBT benefits during the summer to school-age children. So right now, P-EBT 2.0 only covers through June, not through the summer months. So this bill would provide P-EBT to school kids during the summer as well. And it would allow for the program to be extended through the end of the COVID-19 health crisis. It would increase the duration that the program would cover. So if you have any friends, if you have a special contact or connection to, I would say, a senator, especially who is a Republican, perhaps, or maybe is on the fence about whether or not to support the bill, you could make a
Is
phone
this a
call.
California bill or a national bill?
National. Yeah, this is the federal budget bill. Yeah. Then that could be a place where you could weigh in as well. So I will stop there. I can't remember what is next on the agenda, Laura, but happy to take questions now or at the end of the hour.
We can wait till the end because we'll cover some more stuff on P-EBT. But thank you so much for presenting. And if I can get screen share back.
Let's see.
Perfect. All right, and next I have my colleague Stephanie Felton. She's going to talk a little bit more about faith groups.
Thank you, Laura. So the question here is, what can faith groups and faith leaders do, and why are we having this conversation, and what are we asking specifically for faith groups to do? The biggest thing that we'd like to emphasize is getting this information to the community through various outreach initiatives. As Becky mentioned in her presentation, schools were a highly trusted source, and we also have seen some high trust in community partners, such as faith-based organizations. We at Interfaith Sustainable Food Collaborative do plan to send promotional items to the email you provided at registration once we have some more materials and some more information from CDSS. Another step that you can do as a faith community is advocate for schools to do more outreach, as Becky was saying, and to do some more targeted outreach to eligible families, as well as advocate for P-EBT past the June 2021 deadline to get eligible families more food access benefits. And as I mentioned before earlier in the presentation, we also ask and help with promoting the market match incentive program to those who are using any type of federal food assistance program, not just pandemic EBT. So some of the resources that will be coming your way, we will be doing flyers in multiple languages. We did this for the first round of P-EBT in multiple languages and was very helpful for different members of our community. We also wrote up a sample newsletter article that some faith-based groups and congregations put into their announcement section on a e-newsletter and their bulletins, different things like that. And we also would be happy to come up with some language for social media posts, depending on what type of social media your organization use. We also have really strong connections with farmers markets in the Bay Area, the farmers markets who are utilizing the market match incentive program, which is the 2-for-1 incentive within your community. My colleagues and I would also be happy to come to a meeting that your organization is hosting, and we do speak a couple different languages on our team, and we would be happy to get the details and come to you and explain some of what we're presenting here today and some of the things that we need your help with. And as Becky mentioned, and as we'll mention later, there are some advocacy opportunities. This is our office number and our office email on the slide. If you would like to connect with us about any of these things. And like I said, once we get more information from CDSS on promotional materials and tools, we will be sending those to each organization who is represented here today. Next slide, please. So some of the big messages that we'd like to emphasize for families with children, this market match incentive program and the double up bucks, it does become twice the value if used on produce at farmers markets, as mentioned before. The 0 to 6 age children, children who are not yet in school, If their families are currently receiving CalFresh, they are eligible for pandemic EBT in this round. The biggest thing, if you're taking anything away from this, is to really emphasize that accurate information and correct mailing addresses and household demographics are up to date. If this is done before 3/15, it will have to be done through the child's school. After would be through that pandemic EBT helpline, in addition to keeping accurate information with any of the federal assistance programs mentioned in this presentation. And as we've all said, by utilizing this program, it is not being considered for public charge for any undocumented families as well.
So important for undocumented families. The change in
And
administration might have been just as important for their fear.
we have also come up with a tentative anticipated timeline for outreach. So this is the first step. We're giving you this information. We're having this conversation. A lot of people, without children and just in general might not know what pandemic EBT is or how they can help. So it's really appreciative that you guys took the time this evening to have this conversation with us. Like I mentioned before, we should have updated materials from CDSS within the next couple of weeks, and we hope to get those out to our network within the first week of April, tentatively, of course. Outreach will go from April on, and we would be happy to assist you in any way that you would need. And advocacy for P-EBT would be rolling through June of this year as well.
Thank you, Stephanie. And now I'm going to hand it over to Steve to talk a little bit more about the advocacy piece.
Can you hear me, folks? Yes, I'm really sorry about missing the very beginning of this, but I had some connectivity issues, tech issues. I'm not surprised Stephanie and Laura did a great job stepping in. I just want to kind of reiterate a couple of things that folks said. Imagine a family with 2 kids that if they get P-EBT and then they go to the farmer's market and use market match to double it, they could get close to $1,000 worth of benefits. And how many families do we all know that we've been helping get food boxes or other kinds of distributions that could, that kind of money makes a huge difference for them. And we want to make sure nobody's leaving it on the table. So that's the whole reason we're working with congregations to get the word out to folks. I'm going to piggyback on some of what Becky was saying about advocacy. Well, first, there's things that we don't know about the specifics of how things are going to be rolled out in the next month. And the last time around, we saw that we needed to advocate to CDSS, the Department of Social Services, and ask them to change a couple things, including extending the deadline. Well, it turns out they're quite receptive, and standing, behind California Association of Food Banks and Nourish California and others, we were able to support that extension of the deadline, and CDSS responded. But there are other things that we're trying to get pushing for that didn't really come from the state level down. And so we worked more locally to influence the county superintendents of schools here in Contra Costa, working with Will and the Interfaith Council of Contra Costa County, and in other areas too. So this is something it's going to be, we're going to see what comes up. We may need to do more to work with the WIC teams at the county offices and First Five to get the word out to the kids under 6 that are newly eligible. We may be doing a variety of different things. We're definitely going to be ready to kind of stand behind what the food banks and Nourish California are leading on it at the state level. So just keep in mind, tune in, and we're going to be sending you some messaging. For Interfaith Food, the job here is to make it really easy for any of you who want to do something with your congregation or in your community, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So we're going to translate and simplify and make it, specific to your target area as much as possible. So that's all I wanted to add.
Great. Thank you, Steve. And this is kind of some of the areas of where we found our information from, and we'll continue to monitor these sites and get you the correct information to promote. And next I have Will McGarvey from Interfaith Council of Contra Costa. He's going to share a little bit more about food resources in Contra Costa. So I will let him share his screen.
I won't share my screen, but just wanted to just say, hey, we so appreciate you. And if you'll take a look at the chat room, we put some files there for you. The SVDP is the latest flyer from St. Vincent de Paul and their food pantry hours in Pittsburgh. The SKM is a document from the county that if you're preparing food for distribution, or if you have anybody that's, if you're doing a food distribution that's unprepared, but even prepared, they have some an update on the county policies to be sure to be safe in your food preparation, as well as making sure that all of your volunteers are able to stay COVID free. And then that last one is a JPEG with some of the food safety resource links that if you need them. These are some of the things that we described in our last 2 food insecurity roundtable meetings, and we're just wanted to make sure that if you didn't get them, that you have a chance to. And like the St. Vincent de Paul one, that's kind of Contra Costa specific, and they not only have distribution through their Pittsburgh Center on Gladstone Avenue, but they have distribution through regional congregations where they have St. Vincent de Paul chapters in West County, Central County, and East County, North and South County, parts of Central County as well. So even if you're in San Ramon, I think St. Joan of Arc, one of our members in iServe down there, is one of the distribution places as well. So lots of opportunities to serve, as well as partner up with other folks that are doing good food distribution, making sure that everyone is getting what they need during the season, especially before the pandemic relief gets passed by Congress. And we can continue to do whatever outreach to people around the country to get that passed as quickly as possible as well. So any other aspects that you'd like to share around food insecurity? Maybe a quick check-in with our folks. Diane, do you have an update on SHARE?
Hi. Thank you for this presentation. It's wonderful. We have a food pantry SHARE in Concord, California, and
and that's one of the major ones in Central County that works with the food bank for direct distribution to families, right?
Yeah. Well, they mostly work. They mostly work with people in. All right. They work with people in Concord. You have to have a Concord residency, but they're allowed to get food once a month, and they can get more food if they have children. The children need to show their birth certificates, but they can still get food. And they're, let's see. I just spoke to Ken. Let's see if I can. There we go. I had to pick up my notes real quick. Let's see.
And Katie's got a great question that Stephanie or Laura might want to answer.
I'll finish. The SHARE serves around 500 to 700 clients. And believe it or not, their numbers have decreased during COVID due to the county's Project Home Key. Since COVID, he lost 6 food. He lost some drivers that would pick up food from the local groceries, and he needs pantry workers. And so that was interesting that because of the pandemic.
And most of his volunteers were seniors, right?
Yeah, I think pretty much so. Um, there's also the Contra Costa Interfaith Coalition has a 4th-week program, and they have where they collect food cards, gift cards for families in need, and they also have uh, a food program that works from other churches. And I've tried to get more information on that today, but it sounds like they have primary certain churches that they work with that are fulfilling these services.
And that's the Contra Costa Interfaith Coalition, which is a different organization than the Interfaith Council of Contra Costa County.
That the yes, and people get them really confused. The Interfaith Coalition is a smaller, and they deal mostly directly with the social services or the
and furniture distribution for people going back into housing.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Diane and Will. I think we want to open this up to questions on maybe P-EBT. I see that Katie asked a question. She said, I'm curious if a family's school goes back full time, but that family chooses to stay home with an at-home school, will they still be eligible for P-EBT? Maybe Becky, do you have an answer for that question?
Yeah, it's a good question. And my understanding as of right now is that no, they wouldn't be eligible for P-EBT. So in order for the state to kind of expedite and simplify getting P-EBT out to families, their plan is to make a whole set of what they're calling simplifying assumptions about what schools or school districts are or aren't operating in person or virtually or hybrid. So there's something that we didn't talk about during the presentation is that there's going to be a category of kids that receive partial P-EBT benefits because they're attending a hybrid setup where, for example, as a child, maybe you get school meals on Mondays and Wednesdays because that's when your grade gets to go in, but you don't get school meals on Wednesdays and Fridays or whatever. So yeah, so my understanding right now is that these decisions will not be made on a child by child basis. It's going to be blanketed over schools.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else have any, you can unmute yourself and ask a question about any of our presentations tonight.
So how do they find, how exactly do they find out people find out information about the EBTs? I mean, do they find it? I know you said you could get it through Walmart, Amazon, and different places, but how do they get to that point to know it's available?
Yeah, so let me clarify. Children will, well, families, right? The adults are going to be the ones that actually use it, but they're the child's card. So the child will receive a P-EBT card in the mail automatically. There is nothing that the child or the family has to do in order to get that P-EBT card. Now, what they do with the P-EBT card once they received it is the question, right? Do they say, well, I have no idea what this is, I'm going to rip it up and throw it in the trash? Hopefully not. Or are they going to figure out that they can use it at Walmart or Amazon to do online shopping? Or do they know that they can take it to a farmer's market and double the amount of benefits that they have on their card? So the question here isn't how do we tell families to go and get P-EBT? They're going to get it automatically.
How would you not know that it's not a scam or it's God, that'd be so. I think it's brilliant to give it. I think it's brilliant. I just think it would be one of those things. How would you trust or know that it looks official without?
That's why it's really important for schools to start doing the outreach and information sharing with parents about, you're gonna receive a card in the mail. It will look like this. This is why you're getting it, and this is how you use it. So that's why we as a community have to get ahead of people receiving the card, so that when they get it in the mail, they already know what it is. So CDSS, the state, is planning a really extensive public education outreach campaign starting at the end of March. They're going to have a website. They're going to be doing sort of paid placed media ads. They're going to be, I think I've heard them talk about doing like, you know, wraps ads on the sides of buses, possibly. They're going to be mailing families postcards before they receive their P-EBT cards, saying like, heads up, you're going to be getting a card soon. This is what it is. This is why you're getting it.
So that's why it's important for faith leaders to be able to save the same message that they're going to get from other places, to be able to trust this system and get the full value out of it that they're going to need. That's why it's important for us to know about it.
And I think, especially to that point, I think as much as we all want to be putting out the message now to families, it's important to wait for CDSS to develop their materials, so that we don't end up in an unfortunate situation where we're inadvertently causing confusion because this flyer says something different than this other flyer.
Well, didn't you just say that they're changing the logo anyway? That the now and clarify that the apple will not be on the card or on the card.
That's right. No. So when P-EBT 1.0, so last summer when P-EBT went out, people received a little plastic card that it said P-EBT on it, and it had a little image of an apple on it. So in order to avoid this situation where families might have kept their old P-EBT card and now they're getting a new P-EBT card in the mail, and then they're like, oh, I have two P-EBT cards, which one is which, and which one should I use? That's why this time around the state is not putting the apple on the card, so that in messaging and conversations, the state can say, this is what the card looks like. If you still have the one with an apple on it, you can throw it out. That's not the new one. Does that make sense?
Yes. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Do the old cards have an expiration date on them? Maybe after the new ones are issued?
They can be used for a year. Yeah. And after a year, I believe the benefits on the card expires.
Just to piggyback on the timing, it's going to be really important to get it's going to be interesting how it plays out in certain districts where they're planning to start to open in-person instruction. And I think it's going to be important for people to jump on this, sooner rather than later, whenever we can.
Do you think the
see how that
second
plays
round
out.
will be able to go through the summer?
It depends on whether the federal budget bill gets passed. So in the, P-EBT has been authorized at the federal level through all of the COVID stimulus packages that have been passed. And in the last COVID package that was passed, it authorized P-EBT for school-age children through June, not through the summer. And so in this next federal budget package, there is language in there in the version that the House passed that would extend P-EBT through the summer. And we're crossing our fingers and hoping that it gets passed and it becomes so.
I mean, how would they even be able to know? I mean, how would they be able to know? There's so many schools that are hybrid or not hybrid.
Yes.
And how are they going to even figure that out? I mean, that just seems like that.
Yeah. So I just want to do a time check. I know we're over time, but I'm happy to keep answering questions, but is it okay to keep going, Laura?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as long as we're here and we're all agreeing to stay on and answer these questions, I think that's perfect.
And Dan, if you have a question, just speak up.
So the question was around, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Remind me.
Well, I was just so concerned because I know that it's in such a flux for the schools, and they are so overwhelmed with how
Yeah,
to do hybrid training and
yeah.
teaching. And I think adding something like this is just like, I don't know where it's going to go in the files, or in the,
Yeah.
Well,
So
well,
I think,
that's so. I really want to echo that. I mean, what we saw last time around was messaging coming to parents that, in an email newsletter that said, COVID Article 1, COVID Article 2, COVID Article 3, and at the very bottom, PEBT. And some districts, made it more of a priority, but many didn't. And that's part of why, again, it's going to be really important for us to kind of, really strengthen the messaging
well,
coming
and
out
you
from the
can
state.
get, I mean, I think it's so important to get this to like the Interfaith Council. So we get it to the churches. For example, our little local church is working with we're like we have two sister schools that we work with. And one definitely low income. They're both low income, and one is uh, young women, parents, young mothers, so young families that in high school, but the kids could be 0 to 6 that they have. So if and like if I get this information, I could definitely make sure the schools are on top of it. But that's only a couple of schools that but and there could maybe that we need to have some sort of advocacy to also make
Well,
sure
the schools are getting all of this information right from the government, so they're getting all of the ways that they're wanting to be prepared from the state and to be in compliance with that. So we don't have to worry about the schools. We just need to encourage our own folks to take advantage of these systems and encourage them to do so that it's safe and that it's not a part of the public charge. That's the biggest thing for folks that have kind of self excluded themselves from this is fear of ICE.
the one thing I would add to that in terms of what schools need to be doing now is that schools have a very short remaining window to update the addresses that they have on file for children. So without going into the weeds too much, at a certain point, the state is going to pull data from the education data system in order to create a spreadsheet of names and addresses to send P-EBT cards to. Those addresses that they're going to base that on are the addresses that are on file at the child's school. And we think until about March 15th to make sure that that database is updated with children's addresses. So if there is one thing that schools really need to be doing right now, it's asking the families that are enrolled at their schools to please update us if your address has changed. So I would say that that's one thing that you could be encouraging your schools to be proactive with, and it's super time sensitive.
And if we know that there are members of our congregations that have moved, making sure that they've updated their information could be important too then. So they're hearing it from multiple places.
Sure. Yeah, and just to like drive home the point even more, if a family has an outdated address at the time that the state pulls that data, their card will get lost in the mail, right? They'll be wondering, where did my card go? Why didn't I receive it? And that'll create delays in them receiving it, as well as confusion about why didn't I get one. So that's the reason for needing to be on top of that.
Steve put a good reminder that religious schools are able to participate in this first round as well. Dan, I wanted to make sure you got a chance to ask any questions if you had one tonight. Dan, close.
No questions.
All right.
I didn't see, I got the invite from Temple Beth in Eureka, and I didn't see anybody else from up north, really. Or it seemed like this is mostly
we're co-hosting it in Contra Costa, so that's why you're seeing mostly Contra Costa information. But Steve and Interfaith Food Sustainability Cooperative does work up that direction, so you probably got an invitation
Oh, great.
from them.
Thank you.
That's exactly
Last time we
right.
had more folks from Sonoma County too.
Yeah.
I don't know if we went all the way to Humboldt County last time, but it's good to have you, Dan.
Okay, thanks. We're doing pretty good up here as far as strong community.
Good.
Well, if there are no more questions, I think we'll wrap this up, and we'll be in touch with more materials as soon as we hear from CDSS on what faith groups can do to promote this. But thank you all for coming, and thank you, Becky, for joining us to speak on this, and also Will for helping us.
Yes, thank you,
co-host
Becky.
as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you
I
all.
appreciate you.
Great.
Keep doing all the good work that you can do out there to help people decrease their food insecurity.
Yeah.
That's what it's about, right?
Thank you all for what you're doing, and great job, Laura.
And if anyone wants to create a volunteer project, talk to Greg. He'll get our iCare group going. So talk to y'all soon. Be well.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.